Well, we got big news coming out of the oil markets. The European Union has tentatively agreed to a $60 per barrel price cap on Russian oil. It's been a while since I've talked about the European energy crisis, which is ongoing. Russia will not sell oil below market price to Europe based on this price cap. This is essentially an embargo on Russian oil in Europe. That's not what they're calling it, but that will be what the effect is, because the Ruskies will choose to take their business elsewhere. In fact, I think even if it costs them money, the Ruskies will not abide by Europe's price cap of $60 per barrel. Europe instead will have to turn to the American market and the rest of the global market, but particularly America, and try and get oil that way. They'll have to bring in oil from the west, from the Atlantic, rather than bringing it in, across the Urals from the east. And so this inevitably will mean higher oil prices for us here in the United States. And fuel prices are already pretty untenable. I think WTI is trading around $80 a barrel, so much higher than this $60 price cap. And so not only will the Europors have to pay substantially more than $60 a barrel, OPEC, that's who the United States depends on for its oil, rather than Russia. The U.S. imports relatively little oil from Russia, and I think as of now we import probably none after all that's gone on. Our oil benefactors, the OPEC alliance, if they wanted to, they could screw Russia, and they could start pumping more oil to sell to both Europe and the United States. They could take advantage of this political dispute between the EU and Russia, and they could move in and take over that market. But they're not choosing to do that. Now, technically, Russia is a part of OPEC+, and I don't know if they would have a veto over something like this, but certainly, even though I'm not familiar with the bylaws of OPEC+, or the core group, I'm certain that the Arab monarchies who form the core of OPEC could find a way to screw Russia if they really wanted to. They could move in and take advantage of this situation. They're not. They're sticking by Russia. They're coordinating with Russia. And at the same time that Russia is now going to be no longer selling oil to Europe because of this impotent tantrum that the Europors are throwing, OPEC is cutting production overall. So not only are they going to be unable to get oil from Russia because of their own stupidity, the Europors, there's going to be less oil overall in the global market available to be purchased. And so this is a shrinking pie that everyone now has to fight over. And so what does that mean? It means everyone ends up with less oil, i.e. prices will rise. And thus everything will cost more in your countries. Food will cost more. Energy, obviously, because energy is in everything. That will drive up the price of everything. The Europors don't care. The Biden administration doesn't care. Even if you had, let's say, Trump in there, Trump is happy to be an anti-Russia hawk on a lot of this stuff because, he felt the need to virtue signal that he wasn't Putin's puppet. So he probably would have gone along with a lot of the sanction stuff. Who knows? Maybe at this point it would have gotten too crazy for him and Trump would have started, denouncing the Europors. But my point is, even if you had a Republican like Trump in there, their response would just be, okay, well, maybe more domestic U.S. oil production, which is good. That is a problem that we have here in the U.S. is that we don't produce enough oil. You have to constantly explore and get more oil out of the ground. You can't just, rest on your laurels and say, oh, well, we're pumping more oil now than we ever have. It's like, yeah, but we're also consuming a lot more than we ever have. We have more people than we have ever had. So Even if you're producing more oil than you ever have in the past, if you're not producing enough, you're still not producing enough. But that takes time. The oil capex has essentially disappeared over the past few years because of ESG. Everyone says, oh, well, you can't invest in oil anymore. The ESG gods say that oil is bad, so we're going to invest in Tesla batteries that explode in your driveway and burn your house down. But I think it takes, on average, around like 5 or 6 years for oil capex to actually produce oil, to go from money being invested to oil being pumped out of the ground and ending up in your gas tank. So there's no way out of this situation. The only way that things will get better for Europe and the United States is if, one, Europe drops all sanctions on Russia and says to Mr. Putin, if they get down on their knees and they say, I'm sorry, Vlad, I was wrong, and beg him for forgiveness. Second, OPEC Plus then would have to increase and stop reducing its oil output. That's the only way to turn this around quickly. I don't think that either of those things are going to happen. OPEC Plus increasing its production, probably more likely, and it will happen at some point. OPEC, it has its ebbs and its flows. Sometimes OPEC is your best friend, and other days, they're stabbing you in the back, but that's just life when you have to deal with those people. As I see it, oil prices probably will start to fall as a result of the coming recession. I don't think we'll see any relief before then. And initially, it won't be because of increases in production. It'll be because of falling demand for energy. I think that is probably what's going to end up having to bring oil prices down. So in the meantime, it'll be more pain, I said a long time ago, hey, we're in for a world of pain. Well, guess what? We've been experiencing pain. Sure, the regime doesn't want to officially acknowledge it as a recession, but when everybody's getting poorer and nobody can afford anything, doesn't that feel like recession to you? I wish one of these days I had some good news to talk about. It does get rather tiring. Things just seem to get worse, but not so bad that like there's a collapse, like there's a breaking point. It's just more stress and stress and stress. But things don't quite seem to break. And that's the worst part, is you're just sitting and you're waiting, and you know that it's coming. You know that things are going to get even worse than they are now, and they're going to get a lot worse quickly, but then hopefully it'll be over quickly. And things just keep getting incrementally worse and worse. And having to deal with that over a long period of time is much worse than ripping off the Band-Aid, and having, maybe 18 months of, economic devastation. If we had entered, a Great Depression, not on the scale of the 1930s that was artificially prolonged, but, an old-timey 19th century depression 18 months ago, guess what? We'd already be out of it. And everything would be fixed, and we could get back on track. But no, we just drag these things out, year after year after year, and nothing ever gets better. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.